First of all, I appreciate the invitation and our friendship, and it's been fun to just interact, especially over the last 4 or 5 months. You were one of the first people that was kind of like, I remember you, and I guess the first thing I want to say is I'm just a recruiter. Okay. I'm just like you guys. I started out as the technical recruiter back in the day. I placed program analysts in a DOS and an OS environment, and I worked a desk on 128, and I was a contingency recruiter, and I basically learned the trade. Calling applicants in the morning, calling companies in the afternoon, calling applicants at night. The one thing I realized is I could work harder than everybody around me because I'd take a jump rope and jump rope in the base of my building and then keep calling applicants. And then you could call applicants until 10 o'clock at night, and that's what I did. So after doing a good job as a recruiter and being a top biller in my office, my dad asked me a question. He basically said, like, what do you actually do? And I said, I move people from one place to another. And he said, so what value do you bring? And I said, I think I find the right people and put them in the right jobs, and I get a lot of satisfaction from that experience. I think the amazing thing about the Monster experience, at one point, 45 million job seekers, 1.3, 1.4 million jobs on the site. I was in 36 countries, and I would get stopped in the airport, and someone would say, I found my job on Monster. And even to this day, as I'm talking to people, they'll be like, well, maybe even I found one of my jobs on Monster somewhere along the way. And so this idea of helping people and having people find the joy in the process. I just did a post and said, like the pure joy in 1994 when I was starting this business was about helping seekers. And I think they're in trouble. And so maybe that's a premise for this. And I think I want to reiterate, I'm a recruiter and I love this entire system. And, David, to your specific question, I stepped back. I had a term sheet to buy LinkedIn in 2003. Most of you don't know that. And it wasn't a formal term sheet. It was a couple of meetings with Reed and a decision that yes, we could purchase LinkedIn, and my board turned it down. And that's why I left Monster. And most people don't know that. And so it was important for me at the time. I gave 18 months notice. I didn't have a temper tantrum. And it was important that I didn't, it was in my contract, not to badmouth any decisions, to be supportive of it. And in fact, Andy McKelvey, who was the owner of Monster, I had sold Monster to him, invested in my new company. And so it was good spirit all around. If I fast forward, and I'm happy to go back and talk about stuff, but there's a lot of podcasts where I'm kind of talking about the history. But in November of 2023, I went to Phoenix, Arizona, and I rented someone else's car. It was a Turo, stayed in somebody else's house, obviously an Airbnb, and someone else did my grocery shopping while I was at a conference with 5 of us for a few days. And on the way home from that trip, I decided that I was going to audit all of the competitors in the space that kind of I had created at the beginning. Those that don't know, there were only 200 websites in the world when I started. And by the time I knew where I had to register, we were the 454th.com. And their OCC was the other kind of quote unquote job site, but they were a bulletin board. Bill Warren and I argued about the origins, and it's not all written perfectly, but the first job posting and the first resume on the World Wide Web, I put on. And the main thing was I could have bought Nike or Coke.com. I could have bought anything. There was nothing, a bunch of universities. And so at the beginning of this process taught me a lot. And maybe we go back and talk about why I made the decisions around the job postings and resumes, because I think that's important. But I came back in November of 2023, and I spent the entire holiday break basically auditing all the competitors. And what I realized is like 8 out of 10 of the top competitors were still at least loosely following the patents that I created, back in 1994 and 1995. And there, one of the first postings I did was just I posted an old monster board. I don't know, it was, in the Wayback Machine. I was able to capture it, and it had job search agents, it had resume database, it had job searching, and it had the buyer seller marketplace, which everyone is using. And so, what I was amazed about with the top 10 competitors is they're still selling resumes behind a paywall and still selling job postings in a post and pray model that I recognized right away that there's just no way where I had stepped out of the industry, and happy to share some of the stuff I did, but and then stepping back in, there's no way 30 years later that these are the ways that it's still being done. I couldn't believe it, basically. And so I decided right at the end of break, which is in January 2024, that I was going to start a new company. And so I worked on the thesis, and I had a couple of kind of things that were at the center of my thinking, and I want to check these with you guys, and I'm happy to have you tell me that it's not the right thinking. But my first one was with the advantage that ChatGPT provided for me. And at that point, we weren't even talking about all the other big transformers. We were just talking about ChatGPT. And I was starting to put stuff into it, and it was understanding English. And I realized that probably I could parse a resume in a different way than it had been parsed in the past. I had done an audit of the top 5 resume parsers, and the best one got to 83.5, 83.7%. And so the problem with that is more than 15% information that's not right would hurt somebody's confidence in the fact that it was a good resume. And that included us as recruiters, but also as a seeker. And you're looking at it, it's like there's bad mistakes in this, kind of when you pierce the veil of my modern resume and try to copy it well, it didn't go very well. So I decided the first thing is that I thought I could map the entire working population of the United States. And so I don't know, I was just reading somebody's thought about audacious goals. And so that is an audacious goal. But I realized with the new technology that was out that maybe for the first time I could actually put 100 million resumes in the metric space, and I could actually not only get pretty accurate information into my system, but I also could predict what they were doing now, and then look at a larger subset of people doing the same job title or the same skills and say, okay, what did they do next? So my first thesis was that I could map the entire working talent population. The second one was that I could actually do a prediction model where I could see what they're going to do next instead of what they do now. Now you say, okay, why does that matter? Well, the reason why it matters is because all of our systems today look at your historical record. Your track record has always been the way it's been talked about. The problem is that nobody wants to work in their track record. Everybody wants to work on something that's newer than the thing they're working on right now. And so I think if I stay with that thesis of mapping the whole group, and I'll come back to this specific information about talent and what they want, I think if you take out about 25 million people that are below the poverty line, and you take out about 30 million people that work on their feet that don't use a traditional record that shows their employment, you have a give or take about 100 million people that we could map and score. And so that is a thesis that I'm holding on to right now, and I'm basically training, I'm fine tuning a big model to understand what's happening with those 100 million people. Let's talk a little later about what what does it mean to be an AI company, and what does it mean to be actually using AI to help your company? And so someone would say that that's an AI native company versus a company that is using AI to, for example, enhance the front end activity or back end activity communications. And so let's come back to that. The second thesis for me was, if I could map all the talent, then I know what team everybody plays for. And if I know what team everybody plays for, then I actually can map that 100 million people under a company moniker or company logo. So for the first time, I could actually publish 16 million companies. There's about 10 million that have over 10 people and that you have decent records on. And so I could actually take a look at and understand what a player was doing. I like to call them players rather than seekers. It's just my own view. I could see what the player is doing. Who's the team they're playing for? How long have they been there? Where did they come from? Where are they going? What is their propensity to move? And I'll have to shoot all of you at the end of this call because I'm basically sharing the thesis for building my business. I don't mean that literally. The second idea was that I could map all the employees within every company. That could be beautiful, or it could be irritating and fairly disruptive. But I'm going to do it. And so, we'll get the reactions from people. So you should be able to go look at a company and say, oh, there's 2,100 people that work in that company. And then the person at that company is going to say, well, no, there's 2,300 people that work here. Okay, fine. But I got it, 92% right.
Close.
And
Yeah.
there'll be enough where you could adjust the dials, what I call claim, register, and certify. And I'm going to treat it like Yelp. So, you either have a restaurant that has had decided to own their record, or they haven't claimed their record. And that's the way I'm going to do it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Why would you do that? Because I'm building a product for job seekers, for the players. And they need the sight line to be able to see who is like them and where do those people work. So my thinking is that if I know, David, what you're like, and I create effectively a North Star, a document that is all your records, then I can actually say to you, would you like to know other people that are like you and where they work? So now we have a new way to look at companies. Now, I see right away, it sounds like a combination of Glassdoor in this. Okay, so one of the beauties of this business is there are analogies, there are comparisons everywhere. And so that's completely up to you whether, that just sounds like it's a combination of that technology and this technology. But just stay with me for a minute, because I think there's a couple of other factors. Another thing that I have a big theme and thesis and theory about is that a job posting is an amazing vehicle. It's been an amazing vehicle since you had a blacksmith that hammered a piece of paper outside there on a tree saying, I have an opening for an apprentice. And it really hasn't changed much. When I started Monster, the distribution was so crazy. David, you referred to it. When I was talking about the internet, my first meetings at Monster, I would talk to people for an hour, and at the end they'd say, oh, I don't have any interest in Monster, but thank you for teaching me about the internet. I think that's kind of like what's happening today with AI. And I'm not interested in your new AI product, but thank you for teaching me about how this works. And so there's some similarities here. But at the beginning of this process, the job posting, I decided to make it look almost the same as it looked in the newspaper, because the distribution was so innovative that I didn't want to disorient people. And I did the same thing with a resume. In fact, I did research on resumes. I found 5 resumes from Harvard from the early 1900s, 1907, I think. And a resume today in 2025 and a resume in 1907, somewhere around the year the automobile was invented and the telephone, looks exactly the same. There's just no way this resume is a problem. It's French. It means summary, and a person is a whole person, and a resume is a professional track record. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it is broken. So I have a couple of theories about this. One is using AI, it is starving for information. So the concept of a one-page resume is so archaic and so behind the times. LinkedIn, I think, sort of accidentally ended up with no limit on their profiles. So people just keep typing and they're not worried about it on LinkedIn. But as soon as they've got their resume that they're sending into something, they're trying to keep it desperately to 2 pages. I love this business. I'm just bouncing around a little bit. I was talking to a woman yesterday, and she said, "Well, you look at my resume." And I looked at her resume. I said, "Your resume's fine. It's just boring as fuck." and there's nothing wrong. Her experience is excellent. She has little things here and little things there, but it's just there's nothing. It looks like, 2 resume writers later, and experimenting. It ends up with 4 sections on top before you get to the experience. The experience has no real header. It's designed so the ATS can read it. Okay, it's so beautiful. The ATS is so stuck anyway. Like you might as well create your resume to stand out because it's going to get stuck in the ATS and you're going to use it for other reasons. And that was kind of what I told her. But the job posting is also a summary. And there's a beautiful requirement that sits behind that job posting that a hiring manager worked on. And then it came in through our organizations. And then the immediate reaction is, well, we already have that job listing from last year. Let's pick it up from last year. And then you're looking at it and you're kind of saying, well, that's close enough. Or you're saying to the hiring manager, can we use this? The hiring manager's too busy. So they're like, yeah. Like after the 3rd email, you're like, if you don't respond by the end of the day, I'm going to be using this job description. Or TA will say, there's too many requirements if I start a new job description. Whereas if I use an old job description, I don't have to go through all the compliance stuff. And that job description doesn't have enough detail. And so what's happening is now you're taking a job description. We're on video right now, so I love this. So your job description looks like this. It's tangerine. And then you're like, oh, but I'm going to use my LLM and I'm going to make it better. And so they make the shitty job description now has more words and now it looks like an orange. And then what's happening? I'm going to cross over to the resume now, right? Some of you've seen this, right? But this is my coffee mug, and so here, this is a person's resume, and the job posting comes across, and you're like, oh, they're orange, and so the person says, oh, I'm going to put this in ChatGPT, read my job posting, and then take my resume, and then it goes in here like. Comes the resume on the bottom and it looks like this. And then it goes back over to the company and it's like, wow, what a resume. Now, that is a little oversimplistic. The ChatGPT is going to tell you, well, your resume doesn't match that job description. And then you're like, well, what can I do? And if you keep prompting it, it will say, well, try this and try that. And you're like, okay, that was good. And then it's going, oh, what about this line? Okay, try this. Can I say the exact line from the job posting in my resume? Yes. Okay, ChatGPT is there to make you happy. I have a post on LinkedIn. If you follow me, I share all this stuff. I call it my Labrador Retriever. When I need somebody to tell me I'm doing a good job, I just go stick anything in ChatGPT, and it says, "Oh, nice idea. That's really good." I'm like, "Thank you." and so what's happening? I call this airbrushing. And you could argue that cloning might be actually a better way to do it. And it's going to be hard for me on my screen to keep answering. So maybe if Dave or Frank or whatever, if you guys could just grab the key questions, just throw them out to me, because
Yeah.
I'm kind of bouncing around in this a little bit.
Wow, I
And
love it. Wow, I've learned so much already, including the LinkedIn reveal. Whoa, that was interesting. I think I kind of knew that, but back in the day, Yelp. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm not going to let you get out of here without blowing that up a little bit. You just said you are thinking about Yelp. That takes a conversation to me, and the resume mashup. I mean, unpack that just a little bit.
so the Yelp thing is basically they're reviewing restaurants, right? And people are reviewing the restaurants, whether the restaurant claims the restaurant page or not. And so what you end up with is a lot of restaurants where the restaurant hasn't claimed the page and it has lots of reviews on it. But you have now a majority, because it became the right thing to do, of restaurants that have gone in and claimed their Yelp page, and then they're able to add value and actually create the story of the restaurant, which is so important, I think,
Right.
at the end of the day, whether it's just updated menus or whatever the case may be, right? That's it. That's the only comparison for Yelp. I'm not doing reviews in that classic way. I'll ingest reviews to understand what a company's like or what an individual's like, but I'm not trying to. You could argue this could be like Glassdoor for an entire talent population if you wanted
Yeah.
to go that way. That's not my primary goal. What was the other thing you asked me? Oh, with LinkedIn. So it was a very different time. LinkedIn was very small. They started in '02. This was in '03. They were losing a lot of money,
Yeah.
and I was building my own monster networking platform, and I didn't like what was happening, and I really liked the way LinkedIn had approached it, and so I just approached Reed. And my board, we were coming off of 9/11. We were profitable and we were growing when most of the other .coms were going out of business. And it was I guess I don't blame the board, but the board basically said even though we have enough cash to buy it, we think that we should focus in on the core business. And so my feeling at that point right there was that the board had decided they know how to run Monster better than I did, and so I resigned. And let's call it on principle, but it was also on a plan. I resigned because they didn't want to go forward with the plan that I thought would have changed the business. And as my wife says, I might have screwed it up. I would have probably renamed it Monster, and because of my hubris at the time, and whatever. So,
It's great
so
stuff.
Are you going to bring back Trumposaurus?
Oh,
so
he's got the Trump.
yeah. So what is interesting, I was on Chat and Cheese a couple weeks ago, and I don't think it's out yet. And they said, "So are you inhibited by your Monster Pass, or do you embrace it, or whatever?" And my whole bathroom is all Monster. The entire thing is Monster. So
Sure, yeah, sure.
where I go to visit occasionally, as I could figure out where to put it. I have so much really cool stuff. So it's in my bathroom at my office. This is kind of my think tank office. I'll just show you a little bit of like.
Hold on. You zoom in, Jeff. Take photos. Jeff, take
Yeah,
photos.
yeah.
Zoom in, Jeff.
So, it's funny. Like I have two visuals over my shoulder right there, and that one on the right is how I'm mapping all the companies in the country, and this one on the left is the way I look at the market. And I look at the market like a dome, a pyramid, and a spire. And there's about 130 million people in the dome. There's about 5 million in the pyramid, and there's like 1 million in the spire. And it's based on how much money you make, your brand awareness that you have in the marketplace. And I have interesting concepts for how to reach each of these groups. How about I just share a couple more themes, and then we open it up for questions.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the applicant tracking system. Actually, let me finish the job posting for a minute. Job postings in the newspaper didn't really have skills. They had descriptions of the job, and there may have been a few skills that were listed, but there wasn't the emphasis that there is on skills today. And then what happened is once we had search and once we had more resumes coming from all different places, we needed ways to basically calibrate those people. So the job postings started to get more technical. And then now they are very technical, and it really matches to a skill-based hiring movement that we're in the middle of right now. And I think the current job posting has become a cheat sheet for that airbrushing that I was talking about. Like, so now all of a sudden you've got, it's more in many postings, there's like 10 skills and how much you need for each one. It's so clearly laid out that it's a perfect cheat sheet for people to figure out how to align. And what it should do is attract the correct people. But I think more and more that's happening, and somebody said it earlier, you're getting, in the older design, you were getting a few hundred resumes over the course of 3 or 4 weeks. And if 5 to 8% were qualified, you'd have 20 people to work with. You would narrow it down to 10. You would talk to a hiring manager, look at 10 resumes. They'd pick 4. You'd make a hire or 2, and that was a beautiful process. Now you're getting 500 resumes in an hour, and some percentage of those resumes are getting airbrushed, which then is putting us in a position where, as they're moving through the applicant tracking systems, by the way, the applicant tracking systems have 15 functions, one of which is matching. And so you have a range of horsepower in those matching engines. But 8 out of 10 of the ATSs that some I've looked at and some I've talked to recruiters about, so I haven't looked at all of them, but I think 8 out of 10 don't have a sophisticated enough match built into their system to go up against this airbrushing. So what's happening is you're starting to have, instead of having 300 resumes in a month, which you were going through as they were coming in, now you're getting 300 to 500 resumes in an hour. And if it's a popular position, 1,000 resumes within a day or two. And now my conservative view is 30% of those resumes are using AI. And why shouldn't they? Because they know the company's using AI. So 30% of the players are using AI to basically prepare their resume for war. And it's going into the applicant tracking system. And all of a sudden you're having 300 people scoring at an 89 or above, whereas you used to have a small number. And you guys can tell me if you're experiencing this, but I'm talking to lots of recruiters, and it's happening, and people are abandoning their ATS then. Because what's happening is you have 300 people that are qualified. You start digging in. The first 3 or 4 people that you're talking to is like, nope, these people aren't qualified. And you're like, holy shit, I have a pile. My next 3 weeks is going to be going through people that have less qualifications than they would have had in the past. So the job posting is now, it's a weapon for cloning, and the applicant tracking system is getting jammed by the influx. Somebody just told me 50% of people are using some sort of transformer, some sort of ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever your favorite transformer is. And so when that happens, you abandon that channel, which means the agencies are actually not feeling the same pressure at this moment, I think, that the TAs are feeling because the agencies are getting more work right now. But that is going to change. Okay. So that's my ATS thing. You got 15 functions in your ATS. You could probably boil it down to, it's the login process. So you document when you got somebody and how you keep them. It's the matching process, which is under duress right now. And I'm hearing about applicant tracking systems being pulled out because of this stress. And then you have the administrative flow, which is one of the first things that AI is attacking. And so this is a very big business, and my prediction is that the applicant tracking system is starting to be like leaves up against a gate in the fall. It's just, there's more and more people jamming up to it, and as a result, there is no There isn't a solution for that. So that's why I'm describing the talent market as melting down as opposed to just under its usual like disruption.
That's great.
Okay, talk about AI for a minute. So is this? Let me just get. Are people?
Tell me,
Am I too all over the place? Are you following me?
I think there's so much here
Am
to
I?
unpack, Jeff. We're gonna have to distill it a little bit. We're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
gonna unpack everything you've unleashed on us until we get a chance to synthesize it. You just go. You got about 12 minutes. You just keep rolling.
Well,
I mean,
I
I'd love to
really
hear your
want to.
views. We want to hear
I
what
really
you see in
want
the
to
future.
hear. So I think AI is going to be amazing, and I don't think it's going to take most people's jobs. I but I've been coaching every applicant that I talk to. You should be taking an AI class every week
Yeah.
because while you're out of work, uh, if and when you do get an actual interview, being able to talk about the amount of stuff you're learning about AI and our applications, I think is excellent. And so that's my recommendation for all you guys too. Is that there's like an ostrich moment here where AI is like overwhelmed everybody. You can almost feel it when you walk around the floors. I'm going to Transform next week, and I'm going to go with a plastic nose and glasses on, and I'm just going to go walk around. I'm not. I'll go with my
You
with my
should.
name, but I'm just gonna. I'm not presenting. I typically for years would have gone to these conferences and been the keynote speaker or whatever. But I'm just going to go and play. And there's this like Renaissance thing, which is like, oh, it's bullshit. It's going to stay the way it is. And I think machine learning was kind of like that for the last 10 years, right? You'd walk around the floor and people would talk about how everything's going to change because of machine learning. And you're like, oh, it's like nothing changed or whatever. This is going to change. This is going to move our cheese.
Yeah.
And so I think you got to be on it. So the early stuff, um, like I don't know, I know the guy at AI Apply. So let's say it's funny. I just did a reference on Who Moved My Cheese. I thought that note, and I actually had to go back and say this is actually a book by Spencer Johnson from the late '90s because. I knew at least some of the generation would be like, I don't even know what "Who Moved My Cheese" means, but this concept that that you can apply for 1,000 jobs while you sleep, it's just so fucking bad.
It's horrible.
It's just so bad, and it isn't. I feel bad for the young leaders that are doing this because it's like they've reinvented they brought the Messiah to the table. But the problem is they just put nitrous on like a Model T. And the thing wouldn't get out of your driveway. So all of a sudden, like people don't even know they applied for the jobs. The only thing worse than not getting an interview for 3 weeks is when somebody calls you and you're like, I don't know why you're calling me. It's because you applied to my job. So I don't know. I think what you can tell is I love this business. Oh boy, do I love it. And so I've been working with some of these guys, and a lot of them have raised $500,000 or $750,000, and they got this cool thing, and they're like, okay, now what? And it's like it's gonna go away. So I think AI, if you're using it to help you with your communication, if you're using it to help you write your job descriptions, if you're using it to synthesize the interviews that your hiring managers have done, fantastic. To me, that's all in the perimeter. What I'm doing right now is ingesting 2 billion records into a metric space, and I'm looking for the semantic closeness of those people. And then I'm creating neighborhoods based on a metric space. Is like if you look around the room you're in, it's like that's a 3-dimensional room. If I put all the data in this and you think about all the angles and all the connections that you could have when you have hundreds of skills and abilities and values and whatever else you have. And so these neighborhoods start to be where you find a fantastic pocket of Python developers. And then what you're saying is, okay, what are the relationships between these companies? What's the quality of the companies they work for? How long have they been in their roles? And then what you're doing is you're re-ranking in the engine. And the idea here is that you're trying to basically read what's happening in that space. And what you're doing is trying to do unsupervised learning where it has ingested all the data and it's way better than a human being and it's looking at millions of records at the same time. That's the shit, right? Putting it in and saying, I want a better note to my applicant and I'm going to use it for 100 people because it's so good. All that's great. It's just a very different thing. And this is what I'm saying about people that use AI in addition to their product or people that build an AI product. And so I may fall flat on my face with this because it's a big, audacious thing, but I'm trying to build a new company. So I don't think there's going to be any job postings. I think job postings are, why would you hang a shingle out in the street and hope people drive by and see it? Thank you, BHAG.
Next.
That is, I'm sorry, I did that. That's what we did. That's the way we did it on the internet, right? But 30 years later, nobody wants to talk to anybody that decides they want to apply for your job on Easy Apply on Friday because they have to apply to 60 jobs by the end of the week. That's what's happening. So all of a sudden, you're going to want to look for the most talented people. So you need a different model. The job posting model, a third of the jobs that I understand that are created into our systems are because someone is not doing well in their job. So we need to find somebody to replace that person. You cannot announce that job. That job needs more finesse. It needs more confidentiality. A system that would actually look at the top talent is a perfect system for a third of those jobs that are confidential. For the other 2/3 that are just whitewashing out in the marketplace, then you end up with a bunch of random people that have applied. And after a while, all I want people to say is, I just want to go to BoomBand. I don't want to sit in my applicant tracking system. I don't want to keep messing with this. And I think at the end of the day, it'll be better for the secret players, and I think it'll be better for the company. So I'm going to build a different kind of product, and I'm building software right now. I'm sorry, I can't. Maybe I'll do a demo about mid-summer. But the idea is to just change it up. And your LinkedIn resume is 85% historical track record and 15% current. And I think a future resume needs to be 80% current, 15% forward-looking, and 5% historical. And in our skill-based hiring right now, that is all the rage. You just don't even care if the person had a college degree anymore. Yeah. And so I'm exaggerating that because people still want that. But the reality is that your current skills and the ability to describe them is more important. We could talk about Mercor for a minute if you want to, because that seems like something that everybody's like buzzing about. So Mercor is like a staffing firm for a majority of the applicants that are actually going to work for Mercor for companies are from India. And they say the second source is the United States, but I think it's primarily from places where we would typically outsource our development. So, the Pragues and the Indias of the world, the IIT engine puts out a very good junior to mid-level developer, but it doesn't do as good a job in the more dynamic development positions, and that's why the U.S. developer actually has opportunities. I think AI is going to, my prediction is within the next kind of 5 to 8 years, that any job that can be done within 12 weeks of training will probably have an AI component. So you can think about that. If you could learn your job in 12 weeks, And so for me as a TA, that means you need to become a human and be a conversational leader and understand how to problem solve and how to navigate levels with candidates. And there's a whole set. We could probably have another conversation about that. So that's my that's a little bit of the world that I'm playing in right now. I'm going to launch with plans in the late fall, and let me just get some feedback from some people. Is this a worthwhile conversation? Did I just state the obvious, which sometimes people say?
This is great, Jeff, and thanks. I had a couple of questions, and I think it supports you getting feedback from the group. Can you just spend a minute on who's the customer and how the business is going to make money?
Yeah, so the customer is going to be the seeker. I'm going to put the seeker at the center, and I'm going to the employer's still going to pay. And there might be a premium product for seekers, but I still believe that we as companies, our entire job is to find talent that actually can work for us to produce our product or our service. And so I think that I've always believed that the employer should pay the freight, but that the brand should be for seekers. And so, it's funny. I had a big brand, 70% market share with it's half about a better job, it's half about a better life. There's a better job out there, all the taglines we had. And they were not very employer friendly. But what happened is the employers are smart enough to know to come where the people are. And so that's the goal. I'm going to make money. I'm going to rethink the machine, and I'm going to make money more like the way Meta or YouTube make money. More sponsor, more advertising, and I have some ideas of doing that in a way that has some participation with the seeker players. And so all of a sudden, if there was a revenue sharing opportunity, the seeker players would take on a very different stance about who's interested in being in front of them. And so that's my model. I really like the idea of being able to buy the top 100 or the top 1,000 in a particular area. And this concept of a propensity to move, I think, is an exciting tool that we're building out right now.
Wow.
Love hearing that.
Yeah.
Will any of this be recruiter facing?
Yeah. Yep. So the entire system. Well, what's really interesting is you're a recruiter, so you'll come into a company dossier as a member of that company and can actively recruit in our arena, and you're also a player. So you're just one switch away from being in our arena as a seeker, and so yes.
That's great. Hey, listen, we gotta. Wow. Now I remember. Now I remember, Taylor. Jeff, it is so great to have you back. I know I speak for thousands of us that have been looking for someone to come into the arena, call it out. Like I'm just like I'm gonna have to go back and read these transcripts. You've just unpacked and thrown so much at us. And I want to thank you on behalf of everyone here for jumping into the jungle with us,